Stitch Cutie, I'm Brittany with Stitches of Love Quilting, and welcome to the video tutorial for building your applique units for your Uncle Sam block. Now this is the July block, so what we're going to do in this video is build all of our units, put it on our background fabric, and then in the end I'm going to give you some stitch tips about stitch sizes and fun things with threads. And then the next video is going to be how to trim your block down and apply the borders. Let me show you what the block looks like finished. See the borders around it? We're going to put that on in the next video as well. So first things first, let's talk about the tools that I like to have to get started, and you'll probably want something the same or something similar. So let me set this aside. So of course you have your pattern and your placement guide from your box. We're going to use the placement guide in just a second, so I'm just going to put it a little out of reach. Of course you have your pre-fused laser cut applique pieces. I have them in a nice little pile, and I've gone on and removed the backing, the paper backing from the Heat and Bond light. So set that aside. Then you have, of course, your background fabric and your border fabrics. We'll starch and press these when we get to it, but right now we're going to set it aside. Now the setup that I like to use, I have my Premium Glow lighter. This is a light pad, not a lighter. And so I love that it has 3 shades. It's cordless, so you can keep it plugged into the wall if you want, or if you want to have it in a workspace, you know, or travel with it, something like that. It's really nice that it's cordless. Then on top of that, oh my gosh, you're gonna love using this. We have our applique glass. I put that right over my light pad, and we're actually able to iron and build our applique units on that. Then of course, when we go to trimming and things like that, I like to have my cutting mat. And of course you can't live without your Steady Betty, that's a must. And when we're building the applique units, I use my fusing mat. So those are the tools that I have handy. Of course, I'm gonna have my favorite scissors, my Karen K. Buckley scissors. You wanna have a little rotary and a ruler, of course, so that you can trim. I have a micron pin so that I can add the accent line specifically on the face for this block. And then last but not least is my Steam Fast Travel Iron. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is just set a few things aside out of my little pile. And what I want to do first, if you'll notice on our little sheep, he has some accent lines on his face that we're going to stitch. So I'm going to actually trace those now before I build my units. So I'm just going to turn my light pad on. I'm going to grab the little face. And all you need to do is just put this right in place. And with my friction, or not my friction pin, don't use your friction pin for this step, which I love, but we're gonna iron this, which means the line we draw would disappear. So that's why I'm using my Pigma pin. And so I'm just gonna mark where my eyes go. And then we'll mark his mouth. Whoop. There we go. So I know it might be hard to see through my fabric through the camera, but at your house you'll be able to see with the use of your light pad and then your glass. Oh my gosh, this glass is awesome. Okay, so that's the only accent lines we need to mark. You could, if you want to, if you'll notice on his shoes, there's a little straight line. If you want to mark that, you can. To me, a straight line's pretty simple. I'm just gonna wing it when I stitch it. But if you want to mark that on your red piece, do so now. Okay, so now let's start building some units. Let me get my fusing mats. So what I'm gonna do, I have my light pad, my applique glass, which is safe for ironing your applique units. You don't wanna like do a ton of ironing on it, but when you're building your applique units, this glass is 100% safe for ironing on. How cool is that? So I'm just gonna plop my fusing mat down. And so let's talk about some units to build. Let me put my face over here. I'm gonna build a couple units and put them all together. So I'm going to build a little unit of my flag. Then I'm going to build a little unit of the blue and the stars. I'm going to build a little leg unit with the grass. And then I'm going to build the white body unit with the red stripes on it as a unit. And then I'm just going to put it all together, all at one time. And then we'll put it on our background fabric. And the benefit of building these units is if I make a little mistake as I'm going, I can fix it on the little unit before I've gotten it on my background fabric. Plus, if you put it on your background fabric and you're trying to like keep everything in place, things are going to shift around. So building the units and then putting them together before you put on your background fabric ensures accuracy. And it's just really fun to do. All right, So have your pattern out where you can see it. I think that makes it easy. And let's just give it a go. Let's start down here with our grass and our legs. So I have my little pieces of blue, red, and black for the legs. And the first number we're gonna start with is number 1. So we're just gonna lay this in place. What I love about this fusing mat is that it's kind of tacky to the touch. So this first piece that I lay down, I don't even need to press an iron to it yet. So when you're building your units, you don't want to apply too much heat as you go because you can actually overheat the heat and bond light. I haven't personally had it happen, but it can happen. So you just got to be careful. So now what we're going to do is put down piece number 2. So you just grab that piece and we're going to put it right in place. Whoop. So y'all, I have new nails and they're a little long. So bear with me as I kind of fuss with my nails being in the way. So what I'm going to do is take the tip of my iron, and yes, I need to clean this iron, but I love this iron. I'm just going to touch where it overlaps. So I know on the camera it probably looks like my iron is flat down, but I'm really just trying to use the tip. Because again, I just need my pieces to kind of grip together. I don't need it like totally secure because eventually when we put on the background fabric, that's when we'll do that. Then we're going to get our red piece. You just want to make sure you have the right red piece. Let's see, I think that one's this one. And this little guy, I'm sorry if y'all see my head coming in. We're just going to line it up right there. And again, I'm going to press the iron where it overlaps. Right there. And now we have a black piece number 4. So just make sure you have the right. I seem to be picking up the left one first for all of them. Isn't that kind of funny? All right, and if you want, another little trick is you can lay everything out kind of in segments and then just set it aside so when you're actually building it, you have it in place. But these pieces are all pretty different, so it's kind of easy. There we go. And that time I did just do the full surface, just a nice little press. Now we're going to build this left leg. So put that right in place. Boop. And give it a little tap where it overlaps. Now we have red. This is number 6. There we go. Whoop. All right, and we'll give this guy a tap. And now number 7. So now we have this whole little unit built, right? So what do I want to build next? I want to build the flag next. That to me seems like a really fun unit to build. So what I'm going to do is walk over here to the flag. And I do want to point something out. I don't like that I numbered that 13 as last because that needs to go underneath your whole flag unit. So build your flag unit and then put it on top of your the flagpole. So let's just put that flagpole down first so we don't forget that. So again, I don't like how I numbered that. That was my mistake on the pattern. All right, so my little flagpole's in place. Now, a cool thing with the white pieces, you'll notice you're like, hey, I have 2 of every white piece in my kit. Why? Well, the reason is, see how you have 2 exactly the same? The reason is when you're working with white, depending on where it's going to be on your project, you want it to be double layered so you don't see through it, right? So we did this as a double layer so that the brown pole doesn't show through. So we're just going to put one little piece in place, give it a press just where it overlaps. A little piece of fuzz just fell. And then, whoop, another piece of fuzz. I don't know where that came from. And then your second white piece. And we're just going to zap those. Now we have our 3 stripes. The biggest stripe, really easy to put in place because it goes right at the bottom. Boop. Then we have our top stripe. And again, y'all, my nails are just a little too long. I haven't had them this long in like years. Now I know why. Boop. Although they are kind of tweezers. So I'm going to get those 2 in place, give it a little press. Boop. Just for a second. Now I'll add this final little stripe right there. Boop. There we go. Again, I'm trying just to use the tip. I know every now and then I do use the whole thing. And now piece number 12 right there. So gonna give it a zap. Boop, I am using the whole iron there. Okay, so that little flag is built. Isn't that so cute? All right, so now I wanna build his little arm. I'm just gonna build both arms. Why not? Because you can kind of do the units as you like to do them. So let's just see which arm is which. So this is the arm right here. And then it's the thicker of the two hooves. There we go. Just get those in place. Little press. And we're gonna do the same thing over here for this arm unit. Just put that right on the placement guide, and you have the full lines on your placement guide, so there's no guesswork here. I love it. Whoop. Almost. Come on, little guy. Well, he just needs to slide right here for me. There we go. And give that little guy a press. So now we have 2 arm units. Now I want to tell you, you can just very easily pull this up as a unit, right? So I'm just gonna set this arm aside. I'm gonna get my little flag. Look at that. Is that not so cool that it's a little unit? And then this arm. I'm just gonna give myself some space on my pressing sheet is all I'm doing. So now let's do our little stars in our blue. I think that sounds fun, don't you? So we just put our navy piece in place. And now with the stars, we have 2 of them. Now it's a little hard to see through a fabric as dark as navy. So you do kind of have to pull up and look just a smidge. So again, we have 2 of each white piece so that we double line it. So give it a quick press. And I'm just gonna take that second piece that's exactly alike, and I'm gonna put it right on top. Boop. It's a little hard to get in place because you wanna make sure you get that lined up perfectly. There you go. Now our next star, I am just gonna kind of peek under. Sometimes you have to do that even with your light pad. So that's this star. And I'm just gonna guesstimate about right there. Kind of almost lines up actually. There we go, quick press. And then we put the second piece of it right on top. Ooh. There we go. And I'm gonna press for just a second longer there. There we go. And now we have the final star, this big guy. And he goes right there. You just kind of peek. There we go. Give it a press. Isn't this easy? It really is so easy. I know a lot of people get scared about applique, and I just love it. I actually find it very easy, and I hope you do too. It's really easy when you have a placement guide like how we provide. I guess I would say if you didn't have like a placement guide with all your lines, it could be a little daunting, right? So now this unit's totally built. So just kind of let him cool. When it's really hot, you don't want to burn your fingers. So I call it the little shake. Doot, doot, doot. I do it with my heat and bond and with my applique units. And look at that. That's totally ready to use. How cute is that? Got a little piece of fuzz. There we go. So now let's build the last unit I'm going to build before I assemble them all together as one unit is going to be all the stripes on the body. So let me just move this out of the way. Whoop. There we go. And where is this fuzz coming through? I don't know. Do y'all see I keep getting like little fuzzies? I don't know where they're coming from. Okay, so this little guy is easy to put in place. Just line him up all the way around. And now these little top and bottom pieces are a piece of cake. Line it up here. And you'll notice that when we get like to the other stripes, they perfectly line up on the edge, so you know you have it in place. This little guy with the little hook, he goes right here. See? Perfect fit. You know you have it in position when it's a perfect fit on the edges because they are cut to the same line. Now the next stripe in my pile, I'm just going to go on and do the bottom one. There we go. And I'm just going to hold that while I press. And now we have just a couple more pieces. So this little guy, you just make sure again that these little curves on the edge line up perfectly, and they line up perfectly right here on the inside. Then you'll know you have your stripe in the exact right spot. There we go. One more big stripe. There we go. So line him up. Look at that, so cute. I love these little sheepies, don't you? The little U's. Okay, so that's a whole little unit now. So I'm just gonna leave that where it is. I'm gonna start adding to it. So let's take then this star unit, and we're gonna put that in place, and I'm just gonna iron where it overlaps. And again, I know it probably looks like I have my whole iron flat. I'm really like kind of tilting. Can you see I'm like tilting it? So just right there and there. Now we have our face. And so he's easy to line up because you just cover your hole. And the little gray does go over the white star. So once you know you have that hole 100% covered, just press that in place for a second. I am flat right now because I just want to cover all the edges real fast. Now I'm going to put my flag, and if you notice, the flag goes under this. So I'm just going to gently lift right here and put my flag in place. And then before I iron, I'm going to get this arm. I'm going to gently lift right here, and we're going to put our arm in place. Look at that. So where I need to touch my iron is like right here, here, and here. So anywhere your pieces overlap. So give that guy, now I am going to lay it flat. Don't tell anybody. Laying it flat all the way just to get all of it ironed. Now we have an arm coming off over here. And this arm goes on top of the body. Just follow the numbers. So we'll give it a press where it overlaps. And now, only piece left to put on. Look at his little feetsies. So they go underneath. So we're just going to gently lift him. Get this little guy in place. Boop. There we go. And give that a press where it overlaps. So see how easy building the units is? So what, 15 minutes, we've built our units, and we're totally ready to put it on our background fabric. So let's get that background fabric ready. So now I'm not gonna need my light pad at the moment. I'm not gonna need my glass. I'm gonna pull out my Steady Betty. And I'm switching because the glass is great for building applique units, but you don't wanna do like a ton of long-term heat on it, right? And what I love about working with the Steady Betty when I'm like layering onto my background fabric is, or especially for piecing, when we're doing the borders, I'll always press on my Steady Betty. I never even really use my actual ironing board, I must say, because this like absorbs it so you don't get those like visible like creases on top of your fabric where the piecing overhangs, like where your seam allowances are. Okay, so what I'm gonna do while this cools off, I haven't starched my background fabric yet. I should have done that before I filmed, but I didn't. So let's get that going. I like to starch my fabric, and we give you way more fabric than you need. And I think what we put in your kit is actually cut to even bigger than what we say it's cut to. So I'm just gonna gently I like to be consistent with how much starch I'm using throughout an entire project. So I do about this much, and then I iron it dry. You can do this on with a big iron if you want, but honestly, I always just use this little Steady Betty when I'm doing something like this, or with my little steam fast iron. Just sort of iron him. You can see your fabric does shrink a smidge, of course, when you do your starch, but again, you have way more. We're going to trim this down to 9.5 inches, and you have at least an 11-inch square. And most of you, I think the kits, we end up giving you like 11 by 14 or something. It's just an easier cut for the kitters. So you end up with more than we even tell you. Whoop. So it's always better to have a little bit more than you need and then cut down. Now this is a Moda Bella Solid. To me, it's very hard to tell if there's a front or a back, but sometimes I just decide like, oh, I think this side is the top side. So what I'm going to do is fold right sides. Oh, I'm not doing embroidery. I don't need to fold it. When I do embroidery, I fold it to position in the hoop. I'm doing machine applique, so you don't need to do anything. what I'm going to do is just take my guide, and look at that, plop your fabric on. This is our trim line. Can you see the trim line? This outer line is where we're going to trim. So look at that. See, my fabric is way bigger than I need. So I'm just going to put that on top of my Steady Betty. Boop. And then my unit right here, I'm just going to peel it off. And you want to be really careful when you do that. There we go. Because you want to keep him all together. He does just like gently lift off. See? Oh my gosh. That is so cute. All right, let me get my little fusing mat out of the way. So now, again, just make sure your background fabric is face up, the right side facing up. I've covered my trim line totally. And all I'm gonna do is plop this guy into place. Now, could it get any easier? I don't think it could. So in like, what, 15, 20 minutes from getting the box to building the units, you're ready to iron this little guy on. It's 21 minutes I've been talking. So in 20 minutes, you can build this. You probably build it faster without me talking, but you know, it's fun to sew together, right? So now I'm just gonna press this guy into place. You wanna be careful not to drag your iron when you're doing this, especially for pieces like the stars that are pokey, because if you drag your iron, you could hit that edge and just kind of get it out of place. Well, there we go. I'm just going across. And you can see I'm only holding it on there for a few seconds. It takes about 3-4 seconds to iron it on. That's it. And then you do the test to see if you really ironed it. Pick it up. Nothing fell off, so I did it. Yay! How easy was that? Okay, so now I'm going to talk to you about the stitches that we used. So as you know, we do predominantly the buttonhole stitch, and we stitch this with a 30 weight thread in the needle and a matching 50 weight bobbin. We match the needle and bobbin just to make sure that, you know, if your tension's not 100% perfect, you're not going to have like a white bobbin thread showing through. Now on machine embroidery, I will tell you I always use a pre-wound white bobbin. The machine embroidery portion is a little different than doing it on your regular sewing machine. So let's talk about the stitches. And one of my favorite tips to share is a reminder that when you're stitching and you get to, specifically, let's look at on this red line right here. So I did a 2.5 by 2.5 stitch all the way around. And when I got to the very edge, like I would have had my stitch, if I would have not shortened my stitch here, it would then stitch red on top of that black piece. And I don't want that. So I did 2.5 by 2.5 all the way to this stitch right here. Let's see if I can really show you good in the camera. And then you can see I shortened the length of the bite in. So I still kept it the same width of the stitch, the 2.5, but I shortened it, my stitch length, but you know, going in, the bite in, down to 1.5. That way I was able to keep stitching and secure my red stitch all the way down here, but I didn't have a bite of that red thread onto my black piece. So I did that here, and I think I did that somewhere else. If I can remember where I did that, I am not sure, but that's definitely a little trick. So just be mindful that, you know, I kind of like to pick a stitch length and width on my machine to do use for the whole project. For me, that lands at about 2.5 by 2.5. Now, all machines have slightly different lengths when they're talking about that. So play with your machine and find your favorite stitch, but then don't be afraid to veer off of that size, right? So when I stitched this flag, so the navy piece right here, I did 2.5 by 2.5 all the way. When I got to the red stripes, if I would have done that 2.5 bite in, they would have touched all the way. They would have gone like this, and that just wouldn't look good, right? And I could potentially shred my fabric if I do too many overlapping bites in. So I took this down to 1.5 for my bite in on my 3 red stripes. I did that same thing on my brown flagpole. I took my bite in down to 1.5. And I think everywhere else I did that 2.5. Even on the small black pieces, I kept it at 2.5, and it worked out great. You'll notice though that we have a lot of straight stitching on this block. I can't remember, I think there's a lot of straight stitching in May block. I don't remember last month having very much straight stitching. But now in July, we did straight stitching for all 3 stars. Of course, you have the straight stitching for the accent on your face and your mouth. You can do that by hand with 12 weight embroidery thread if you want, or you can just very carefully do a straight line. I like to do run over the stitch several times, and you can see on my nose I ran, or like, yeah, the nose portion, I ran over it, and I didn't do one more stitch right here. So I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna add one more stitch. And I made sure, for those of you that have the embroidery machine, I made sure that that line is thick like these two. So then we did a straight line all the way around on the white. So you're just gonna do a little right here, you're gonna cut your thread, come over here, do the white, straight stitch all the way around. And then we did the 2.5 by 2.5 on all the red. And I can tell you, you don't have to stitch yours exactly like how we stitch ours. It's your quilt. There's no quilt police. Have fun with it. If you want to do all buttonhole stitch everywhere, 100% do it. If you want to do zigzag stitch, 100% do it. If you want to do straight stitching everywhere, 100% do it. This is about making you happy and getting you a really fun finished project that you enjoyed making. So I hope that those little stitch tips helped. Oh, one more thing to say, we did match our thread everywhere. So like we use blue on blue, red on red. You can add a lot of flair to a project when you mix and match the threads, because you give yourself a lot of contrast. Like, one thing I debated, instead of having to do just that little bitty bit of white right there on the sewing machine, I debated just doing a red buttonhole stitch all the way around, because having a little bit of red show right there on the white, that would be no problem. So you can do things like that, you know, add to your enjoyment in the process of making it. So this block did have, you know, some little pieces to stitch. So if you want to just do some straight lines on this, do it. So I hope that this tutorial has been helpful. The next video that's gonna go in this month's series is going to be how to trim your block and apply the borders, okay? So now that you have all of your unit ready to go, it's time for you to go stitch, and when you're done with that, come back to the next video for trimming. Happy stitching!